She ordered 2 glasses of wine. The waiter only saw one person at the table, so he asked, politely, "Expecting someone?" She smiled. "I always do." I watched from 8 feet away, seated behind a decorative column and a couple of clueless tourists arguing over the menu. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. My pulse had already moved into my ears. The second glass sat untouched. For now. She glanced at her phone, once, twice, 3 times in a minute, tucked it away, checked her lipstick in a compact mirror, tilted her head just slightly, like she was rehearsing a smile. Not her casual smile, the other one. The one I hadn't seen since our 3rd anniversary. The one she used to use on me. Then her hand reached up and fixed a strand of hair. That move, that nervous little twitch, was her tell. The same one I'd seen when she met my parents for the first time. When she went in for her last job interview. When she lied to my face and said she had just bumped into someone from college and they caught up for a minute. This wasn't a bump in. This was a meeting. Planned. Practiced. Polished. I didn't find out by accident. I wasn't lucky. I spent 6 weeks playing dumb. 6 weeks sitting in silence while she texted with her screen tilted away. 6 weeks hearing the name Derek in her sleep. Once even followed by a soft laugh. I'm not proud of what I did next. I went through her laptop. I logged in. I saw the emails. The calendar invites. The 2 bookings at the Warwick under her maiden name. But I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I didn't explode. Instead, I picked this night. This table. This moment. She didn't know I'd canceled his reservation. She didn't know I'd messaged him from her phone earlier, while she was in the shower, and told him to reschedule. She didn't know I'd be the one walking toward her, right when the waiter returned and asked, "Still want to keep that second glass?" I walked past him, took the seat, picked up the glass, and said, "He's not coming." The moment her eyes met mine, she didn't speak. She didn't gasp. She didn't move. She just froze, like a guilty statue in the middle of a crowded room, clinging to a fantasy that had just shattered like stemware on marble. And I raised the glass, not to toast, to begin. Her fingers hovered above the rim of her wine glass like she didn't know what to do with them. She blinked once, then again, and still hadn't said a word. I could hear the soft chime of silverware behind us, the clink of plates from other tables, the faint music of the piano near the bar. But between us, silence. Thick, suffocating silence. She glanced around, probably hoping this was some prank or coincidence. Like maybe she could pretend I'd just happened to be at the same upscale restaurant where she'd planned her secret evening. But no, she knew me too well. Knew I didn't dine here. Knew this wasn't my scene. Knew exactly what my presence meant. I leaned forward slowly, rested my elbows on the white linen tablecloth, and whispered, "Should I say his name, or do you want to?" That finally cracked something. Her jaw tightened. A storm passed behind her eyes. But still, she said nothing. So I kept going. "Derek, right? Navy suits. Drives a leased Tesla. Divorced. Works 2 blocks from your office. Likes jazz and whiskey and apparently other men's wives." Her hand finally moved to grab the glass, but she didn't drink from it. Just held it like a shield, as if the stem could somehow block the wave coming for her. I could have shouted. I could have made a scene. But I didn't. I sat calmly, like I'd rehearsed every line in a play I never wanted to be in. Because I had. For the last 6 weeks, I collected lies like puzzle pieces. She told me she had to work late, but her office was dark at 6:30. I know, because I drove by. She told me she was tired, but she wore new lipstick and curled her hair before leaving. She told me she was going to dinner with the girls, but her friend Tina mentioned she hadn't seen her in over a month. And then came the receipts, literally. I found one in the coat she never wore around me. Dinner for 2. Hotel room. Bottle of Merlot. But what hurt more than the cheating itself, more than the nights she gave to another man, was how easy it all seemed for her. How she could lie with the same mouth she used to say she loved me. How she'd come home smelling like sandalwood and guilt and expect me not to notice. I stared at her for a long moment. "Why here?" I asked softer now. "Why bring him to the same place we had our anniversary?" That landed. Her lips parted, then shut again. For a flicker of a second, she almost looked ashamed. She finally whispered, "I didn't think you'd." "No? Show up? Still care?" She didn't answer, and I realized something in that silence. She thought I was weak. She thought I'd just keep playing the loyal fool forever. But I wasn't here tonight just to expose her. I was here to end the game. I pulled out a folded napkin. Inside it was a printed photo, grainy, time-stamped, unmistakable. Her and Derek. Together. Close. I slid it across the table. I canceled his reservation, I said calmly. He won't be coming. Then I stood. You and your lies have a table for two, I added, stepping away. Enjoy the wine. She didn't stop me. Not then. But when I walked past the hostess stand, I heard a chair screech behind me. She was getting up. And I knew. This wasn't over yet. I didn't look back. I walked straight out the front doors, into the chilled night air, heart pounding louder than my footsteps on the pavement. There was something terrifying about silence after betrayal, when all the yelling and crying you'd imagined never happened, and instead, you're left with this awful emptiness in your chest like a hole got punched through your ribs. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed distance. I needed to breathe air she hadn't tainted with her perfume and lies. But 20 steps down the sidewalk, I heard it. Heels. Clicking fast. Chasing me. Quentin, wait. I kept walking. She jogged up beside me, her breath visible in the cold, face flushed with panic or embarrassment. I honestly couldn't tell. Please, she said, don't do this here. I stopped, finally, under the orange glow of a street lamp. Don't do what, Carla? I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. Don't walk away after you handed me a live grenade and asked me to pretend it was a flower? Her mouth opened. No words came. And I could see it again, that tiny flicker of shame. It came and went so fast I almost missed it. Quentin, I didn't plan. Don't lie, I cut her off. You planned every second of this. You booked hotel rooms under different names. You told me you were doing Pilates while you were doing him. I've seen the emails, Carla. I know it all. She froze. There it was. The truth had landed. She knew the game was over. Then she tried to pivot. Like always. Okay, fine. You found out. What now? You humiliate me in public? You blow up our whole marriage because of one mistake? I laughed. This dry, bitter sound that didn't even feel like mine. One mistake? It wasn't one night, Carla. It was Thursdays. Over and over. It was stolen hours and private meetings and gaslighting me into thinking I was paranoid while you were out pretending to be someone else. And that's when she did something I didn't expect. She cried, but not loud, hysterical sobbing. Just silent tears, down her cheeks, across her perfect makeup. She didn't wipe them. She just stood there, mascara slowly melting, the streetlight catching in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she whispered. I didn't. I just wanted to feel something again. I blinked. So you burned everything down to feel something? I thought you didn't care anymore, she said, voice breaking. You barely touched me. You stopped asking how I was. You were always in your own head, always tired. So you cheated because I was tired? I snapped. Because I didn't read your mind? You had so many chances to talk to me, Carla. To scream. To beg. To say anything. But you chose secrets. You chose him. Silence again. Heavy. Like all the noise in the world had drained out around us. She reached for my hand, stupidly, instinctively. I pulled it away. That stung her. She finally said, "What now?" I stared at her. "I'm going home," I said. "You should figure out if you still have one." And I walked away again. This time, she didn't follow. But when I got to my car, something was sitting on the windshield. A hotel key card. No note. Just the key. Like an invitation. Or a warning. I stared at the hotel key card resting beneath my wiper blade like it was radioactive. It glowed in my mind, humming with every bitter possibility. Part of me wanted to throw it into the gutter without a second thought, to wash my hands of her and her games. But another part, the weaker, more pathetic part that still remembered our wedding playlist and the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder when she laughed, wanted to know more. Needed to. I stood in that frozen moment for a long time. Long enough for the parking meter to blink red. Long enough for her silhouette to vanish down the street behind me. When I finally grabbed the key, I didn't go straight home. I got in my car, turned the ignition, and sat there, in complete silence, while the city moved around me. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I kept hearing the waiter's voice asking, expecting someone, and her saying, "I always do." Like it was some kind of script she'd rehearsed. I pulled up to the Warwick an hour later. I wasn't sure what I expected to find. Maybe a note. Maybe a confession on hotel stationery. Maybe nothing but an empty room and the echo of what they'd done. But when I rode the elevator to the 9th floor and found room 917, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the handle for a full 30 seconds before I slid the key through the lock. Click. The door opened, and it wasn't empty. There were candles burning. Not hotel ones, real ones, in glass jars, 3 of them lit across the dresser. One was lavender. One smelled like pine. The third one, I don't know, something sweet and familiar. The kind she used to burn in our apartment when we first moved in. I stepped inside slowly, careful not to make a sound. The room was warm. Lived in. The bed wasn't messy, but it wasn't perfectly made either. On the table by the window sat a bottle of wine, open, and 2 glasses, both partially full. And then I saw it. A letter, folded neatly. My name on the front in her handwriting. Quentin. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there, heart hammering, eyes darting around for signs. Of him, of her, of something worse. But there was no one else. Just the soft flicker of candlelight and the haunting stillness of a place that was supposed to be romantic, but now felt like a crime scene. I unfolded the letter with shaking hands. If you're reading this, then I couldn't say it to your face. I'm sorry. I know you probably hate me right now. Maybe forever. I deserve that. But this wasn't what I meant to happen. At first it was just coffee. Then it was company. Then it was comfort. I didn't plan it. But I didn't stop it either. I wish I could tell you I regret it. And I do. But not for the reasons you think. I regret not telling you sooner. I regret not telling him no. I regret hurting you. Because you never deserved this. You've always been good to me. You just stopped seeing me. I needed someone to see me. That's all. No signature. Just that. A coward's confession in a pretty hotel room. I stood there reading it over and over like it might change on the second pass. But the words stayed the same, soaked in guilt, dripping in excuses. She said I stopped seeing her, but I saw her every day. I saw her curl her hair and walk out the door. I saw her stare past me at dinner. I saw her turn away in bed. And I saw the truth in her silence long before she said a word. Then I noticed something else. On the pillow, half tucked under the edge of the blanket, was a ring. Hers. The one I gave her. She hadn't lost it. She hadn't forgotten it. She left it there. Like punctuation. But it wasn't an ending. Not yet. Because as I turned to leave the room, something caught my eye through the peephole. A figure in the hallway, standing still. Not her. Not Derek. Someone else entirely. Watching. Waiting. And that's when I realized this web was even messier than I thought. The figure outside room 917 didn't move when I opened the door. He just stood there, arms crossed, back leaning casually against the wall like he'd been waiting a while, too long. His clothes were sharp but wrinkled, like he'd changed into them in a hurry. His eyes, though, they weren't casual. They were searching, calculating, restless. The second our eyes met, I knew. Derek, I asked, though I didn't need to. He smirked, barely. You must be the husband, he said, like it was some kind of joke. There was no awkwardness in him, no guilt, no shame, just this bizarre calm, like he'd shown up for a reservation that had gotten bumped without notice. I should have punched him. I thought about it. My fist even twitched. But instead, I just stared at him, wondering how long he'd been standing there and why he didn't knock. She texted me an hour ago, he said, as if reading my thoughts. Told me not to come. Said she needed to fix things. He looked at the door behind me. I take it she's not in there. I didn't answer. I couldn't believe how normal he made it all sound. Like this whole twisted triangle had an itinerary. He shifted his weight, clearly not bothered by my silence. You know, he said slowly, when she first told me she was married, I was going to walk away. Then why didn't you? He shrugged. Because she kept coming back. And I figured, if a woman keeps choosing you, even when she's not supposed to, maybe that means something. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so grotesquely delusional I didn't know what else to do. She didn't choose you, I said. She didn't choose anyone. She just lied to everyone and hoped nobody would compare notes. That knocked the smirk off his face. For a second, she left the ring, I added. You think that means she picked you? He didn't answer. And that silence? That was the real moment. The first time either of us acknowledged out loud that maybe Carla didn't love either of us the way we wanted to believe. Look, man, he said finally. I didn't come here to fight. I just wanted to see if she was okay. She seemed off lately. That struck a nerve. Because she had. Even in all her performances, the red lipstick, the fake smiles, the careful lies, something had been unraveling beneath the surface. Something brittle and scared. something even she didn't seem to understand. And now? Now it looked like she'd disappeared from both our radars, leaving a trail of wreckage and unanswered questions. I think you should go, I said. He looked at me, really looked, then nodded. Fair enough. He turned and walked away. No dramatic exit. No last word. Just footsteps fading down the hallway until he disappeared into the elevator. I shut the door, locked it behind me, and stood in the middle of room 917 again. The wine had gone warm. The candles were still burning low. The silence in that room was so loud it made my ears ring. And then something caught my eye. A second envelope. Not on the bed this time. On the floor. Half tucked under the dresser, like it had fallen by mistake. I picked it up. It didn't have my name on it. It had his. Derek. I didn't open it right away. My hand hovered over the crease. Because suddenly, I wasn't just the betrayed husband anymore. I was holding both sides of the story. And something told me they didn't match. I stood in the center of that quiet hotel room holding the envelope marked Derek. And for the first time in this entire sick mess, I hesitated. Not out of guilt, but something closer to fear. Not fear of the truth itself, but fear of discovering something even worse. That I hadn't known her at all. That I had loved a ghost. That the woman who used to sleep beside me had slipped away a long time ago, and I never noticed. I didn't open it like some angry revenge move. I opened it because I needed to know what she said to him that she couldn't say to me. Maybe I was hoping she lied to him too, that I wasn't the only one who got the edited version of her heart. Or maybe I needed to see, in her own words, which one of us she truly betrayed. The letter was handwritten, neat, with curves in her letters I hadn't seen since our early days, like she took her time with this. Like it mattered. And that hurt more than I expected. Derek, I'm sorry I've dragged you into this. What we had felt real, even if it wasn't supposed to. I never planned for it to go beyond dinner. But then dinner turned into weekends, and weekends turned into something I couldn't pull myself out of. I need you to know I wasn't using you, but I wasn't free either. I let myself believe I could be two people. That I could keep the life I had and still chase the life I missed. I can't anymore. Tonight, I chose to end it. With both of you. I know that sounds cruel, but it's the first honest thing I've done in months. I'm not going with you. I'm not going home. I'm going to figure out who I am when I'm not pretending for someone else. Please don't look for me. That was it. No date. No signature. No drama. Just a clean break, like she wanted to erase herself from both our lives in one swift stroke. She didn't pick him. She didn't pick me. She just vanished. And that terrified me more than if she had chosen him. I looked around the room again. The wine. The candles. The 2 glasses. The hotel bed that hadn't been touched. It was all staged, not for a night of passion, but a final performance. One last illusion, left behind for the both of us to find, like some kind of twisted closure gift. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something wasn't right. Carla wasn't the type to walk away without tying up loose ends. She planned everything, right down to her exit. That's why I knew what I had to do next wasn't about her anymore. It was about where she'd gone. Because she said not to look for her. And I didn't believe that for a second. So I checked the bathroom. Nothing. Closet. Empty. I even checked under the bed, like I was in some stupid movie, but there was nothing there except a receipt tucked behind the nightstand. I pulled it out. It wasn't for this hotel. It was for a bus ticket. A one-way trip to a small town 2 hours south, somewhere we had never been together. A place that meant nothing to me, but maybe it meant something to her. I grabbed the receipt, folded the letter, and left the room without blowing out the candles. Let them burn. Let the whole room burn, for all I cared. I had somewhere to be. And if Carla thought she could disappear without facing the wreckage she left behind, she didn't know me as well as she thought. Because now I wasn't her husband anymore. I was the man chasing the storm she created. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't go home. I didn't even call anyone. I drove. Straight south. No music, no podcasts. Just the hum of tires on asphalt and the sound of my thoughts screaming over themselves. The town on the receipt wasn't some quaint, postcard-type escape. It was small, faded. One of those places where the gas station doubles as a grocery store and the motel still uses real keys on metal rings. I pulled into town just after 6 a.m., the sky still gray, the cold biting at the edges of my jacket. The bus station, if you could call it that, was nothing more than a bench under a cracked plastic shelter. A kid sat there smoking something, earbuds in, completely detached from reality. But behind the bench was a bulletin board, and taped to it, crooked and fluttering in the wind, was a local map. I scanned it for anything at all that would explain why she came here. There were only a handful of places that stood out: a church, a motel, a tiny diner, and something called Silver Pine Retreat Center on the outskirts of town. That last one caught my eye. I didn't know why, just a hunch. 15 minutes later, I was pulling into a gravel driveway lined with actual pine trees. A wooden sign swung loosely on a rusted hinge. The retreat looked more like a rebranded summer camp: cabins, a small lodge, a garden out back. I parked and walked into the lodge, where a woman with too much optimism in her voice smiled at me from behind a counter that smelled like peppermint tea. "Can I help you?" I hesitated. "Yeah, I'm looking for someone. Carla." She might have checked in last night. Mid-30s, dark hair, wedding ring missing on purpose. The woman blinked. Something shifted in her face, just slightly. A flicker of recognition. Then she nodded, slow. "She's here," she said. But she asked not to be disturbed. That hit me harder than I expected. I almost laughed. Of course she did. "I'm not here to yell," I muttered. "I'm not even sure what I'm doing here. I needed to know." The woman gave me a long look, then sighed, scribbled something on a notepad, and slid it across the desk. "Cabin 6. Down the path, last on the right." I walked. Slowly. The morning was damp, and the pine needles on the ground muffled my steps. Each cabin had a number painted in white. When I reached 6, I saw a light on behind the curtain. I didn't knock right away. I just stood there, heart pounding, breathing in cold air and stale betrayal. Then I knocked. Once. Twice. The door opened just a crack. And there she was. No makeup. Hair tied back. Wearing a sweatshirt that didn't belong to her. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. Not shocked, not angry. Just startled. Like she'd forgotten I existed. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Yeah, well," I said quietly. "You shouldn't have left that receipt." She stepped out, pulling the door closed behind her, as if she didn't want me to see what was inside. "How did you find this place?" "You told me not to look," I said. "That was your mistake." She didn't argue. She just wrapped her arms around herself and stared at the ground, like the weight of everything she'd run from had finally caught up. "I'm not here to fix anything," I said. "Not with you. Not with us." That ended the second I opened that hotel door. "I just want one thing." She looked up. "I want to hear the real reason," I said. "No letters. No rehearsed lines. I want to know why you did this. Not the answer you give him. The one you've been hiding from both of us." She didn't respond right away. The wind rustled the trees above us. She looked over my shoulder, at nothing in particular. And then, in the quietest voice I'd ever heard from her, she said, "Because I thought disappearing would hurt less than being honest." And that's when I knew. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd betrayed herself. We stood there, beneath the whispering trees, not as husband and wife anymore, but as two people finally facing the wreckage they had created, and the silence that allowed it to grow. Carla wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She wasn't spinning excuses like she had before. And maybe that's why, for the first time in months, I actually heard her. Disappearing would hurt less than being honest. I could have hated her for that. I could have reminded her that honesty wouldn't have torn apart 10 years of shared history, wouldn't have shattered our home, wouldn't have made me question every single touch, glance, and word between us. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I just stood there and said, "You were wrong." She tilted her head, waiting. "Honesty would have hurt," I said. "But disappearing? That nearly destroyed me." She looked like she wanted to say something, but I held up a hand. "I didn't come here for revenge," I told her. "Not to take you back. Not to forgive and forget. I came here for peace. Because if I didn't see you again, if I didn't ask why face to face, I'd carry it around forever. And I don't want to live in that shadow anymore." She closed her eyes for a long second. When she opened them again, something in her had softened. Or broken. Maybe both. "I'm sorry, Quentin," she said, not with drama, not with desperation. Just quietly, truthfully, for everything. I nodded. "I know," I replied. "And I think I'm finally okay with not hating you for it." She let out a breath, shaky, uncertain, like that was the one thing she hadn't expected. "I hope you find yourself," I added. "But you're not going to find her in hotel rooms or other people's arms. You're going to have to sit in the quiet and face all the parts of you you've been running from. I had to do the same. Then I did something that surprised both of us. I stepped forward and hugged her. Not out of love, out of release. She hugged me back, and for a moment, there were no broken vows or bitter words between us. Just two people finally setting each other free. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen table. I whispered, "Sign them when you're ready." She nodded against my shoulder. I pulled away, took one last look at the woman I used to know, and turned down the path without a single glance back. By the time I got to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Weightless, not happy, not healed, but ready. 3 weeks later, I moved into a new apartment across the city. It was smaller, quieter, a space that felt like mine. I bought new dishes, replaced every towel, donated the wine glasses, and slowly, piece by piece, I started building a life where I no longer had to second-guess the person beside me. And then, one afternoon, at a little bookstore I'd never noticed before, I met someone. Not someone to fix me, not a rebound, just a woman who smiled like she meant it and laughed like she wasn't trying to hide anything. We talked about books, then coffee, then plans. And for the first time in a long, painful, messy stretch of life, I felt something warm again. Hope.